Donald Trump's hush money criminal trial will resume today in a New York City courtroom after a busy day yesterday where both sides delivered opening statements and the prosecution called its first witness. In their openings, the prosecution and defense painted two very different pictures of the former president. Prosecutors describing him as having been involved in years of sordid business dealings. They called Trump a co-conspirator in a plot to cover up sex scandals in a so-called catch-and-kill plan during the 2016 presidential election. They said Trump's actions amount to criminal conspiracy and cover-up by scheming with his then lawyer, Michael Cohen, and David Pecker, who was the publisher of the National Enquirer at the time and the first witness. The defense depicted Trump as a dignified former president and a family man, and above all, innocent.
Oh my.
Defense stressing no crime was committed. The prosecution then called Pecker as its first witness. The former chairman and CEO of American Media Incorporated explained his publications had practiced, quote, checkbook journalism, where they paid thousands of dollars for stories. The publications also would purchase stories to prevent them from being published by other outlets and then bury them. Pecker also testified Trump met with him after the 2016 election to thank him for being the campaign's, quote, eyes and ears, scooping up information that could be harmful to Trump and then reporting it back to Michael Cohen. Pecker is expected to resume his testimony later this morning. Let's bring in former litigator and MSNBC legal correspondent Lisa Rubin and former U.S. attorney and MSNBC contributor Chuck Rosenberg. Good morning to you both. It's great to have you with us. Lisa, you're in the overflow room yesterday watching all of this, kind of keeping track of Donald Trump's facial gestures and perhaps nodding off. What was your big takeaway from yesterday, day one?
A big takeaway is that this is a crime about falsification of business records. And yet, what the government seems to have the most evidence of is of the underlying conspiracy. What's still unknown to me is how they're going to prove Donald Trump's own involvement in the falsification of the business records with which he's been charged. So we heard a lot of previews of the evidence of the construction of the conspiracy, who was involved in it, who will place Donald Trump with the knowledge and intent to commit election-related crimes. What I didn't hear as much about is how Donald Trump then directed the cover-up thereafter. For example, Willie, there is a 2017 Oval Office meeting between Donald Trump and Michael Cohen where the prosecution says they cemented the repayment deal. How are they going to prove that? One, through the testimony of Michael Cohen. But I was looking yesterday to hear how else are they going to prove that? They say they have a photograph of the two gentlemen at that meeting. They also have invoices days afterwards. And then a couple of days after that, the first payment to Michael Cohen. But I was hoping to hear that they have a lot more than that. Somebody who was also at the meeting, who overheard the meeting, who placed some of these documents in front of Donald Trump, heard his comments about it. I didn't hear that yesterday. I'm hoping that we hear prosecutors have a lot more about the back end of the deal as much as they do about the front end of it.
Chuck, what stood out to you yesterday?
Yeah, so I agree with Lisa, but I would add one thing. You know, the circumstances also matter. Mm-hmm. We often talk about there being direct evidence, maybe conversations or photographs or emails of a transaction. But circumstances matter too, Willie. If you walk out of your house and there's snow on your front lawn, what do you think happened last night? It snowed. And you may not have seen it. And there may be some other explanation for why there's snow on your front lawn. Maybe someone put it there. But the likely explanation is that it snowed. And so here, Lisa, and I know you agree because we've talked about this, there are a bunch of circumstances, the timing, the motivation that show that after these conversations and this conspiracy formed, certain things happened, including the issuance of checks to Michael Cohen under the guise of a retainer agreement, and then false ledger entries that followed. And so you're going to see, I think, over the course of this trial, Willie, direct evidence of the conspiracy and what they agreed to do, and circumstantial evidence as well. And a judge will tell the jury at the end of the day, both matter. They're both compelling. You can accept circumstantial or direct evidence in deliberating on your verdict.
Hey everyone, MSNBC has a new and improved app. You'll get real-time alerts and analysis, live blogs, in-depth essays, video highlights, and the best 2024 election coverage. Download the new MSNBC app. Here's how to do it. You tap on the App Store on your phone. You hit search on the bottom right corner. You type in MSNBC. You click on the MSNBC app. You click on Get or the cloud icon and enjoy it.